Chapter 16. Peleg hears the voice. Peleg's time, location, plains of Shinar, Adama, first dimension. Peleg was greeted by the pounding of the drum. This was not the ordinary rhythm of men making merry after a day's toil in the tower complex. No, which meant something significant was happening for all tribes. He was still a few spans from the city of Babel when he saw a caravan of merchants coming his way. "Excuse me, fine lord," said Peleg as he approached them. "Might you tell me what message the drums send? I have just come from a far journey and have not heard any news as of yet. "'Tis exciting news indeed," said the gentleman. "The tower project has been completed ahead of schedule. The mighty Nimrod beckons all to come and worship our gods for this great blessing." These men were dressed in temple garb from head to toe. Color indicated each god they served. "Oh, how interesting," said Peleg. He thought, "Our gods? What folly!" But Peleg knew better than to challenge their beliefs outright. "When is the celebration to begin?" "In 2 days' time," said the temple worker. "There is yet so much to be done to properly conduct the ceremony." "Like what?" asked Peleg. "Oh, you have not been in Shinar for quite some time, have you?" answered the other servant. "Nimrod has commanded that the choicest young maidens be brought to the tower for preparations. The one who is most suitable will become his consort. And Nimrod has graciously agreed to bless every newborn in Shinar at the dedication of the tower," said the first temple worker. His enthusiasm seemed to grow with every word. "Every mother is to present their babes to the elder Sheba, who will select one special child to be dedicated throughout the empire. So far, only those in Babel have been alerted. We must still reach Calneh, Erech, and Akkad before nightfall, if we are to present the virgins to the priests in time." "I apologize, but I am a little confused," said Peleg. "Is not the mighty Nimrod already espoused to one wife?" The first exasperation. "Of course, but that is neither here nor there," he said, as if Peleg was clearly lacking in the mind. "The image has spoken. The god Moloch said many communions are needed to keep this valley and our people fertile. The virgins will be presented first to our gods, then they will be eligible for marriage to the suitor their father chooses." "I see," said Peleg. "Does it seem odd that these gods request something so unlike the 7 commands our father Noah taught us?" The second temple worker shook his head and patted Peleg on the shoulder. "My dear young one, the voice our father Noah claimed to hear was merely the result of too much wine. He emulated the stumbling walk of a drunkard." The other temple assistant in the caravan had begun to notice the conversation. They laughed at the imitation of Noah. "You do realize that no one has heard any voice like that which the Shemites speak of in over 100 years, don't you?" The temple worker didn't wait for an answer. He added quickly, "But our image is a real God we can see and feel and touch. He speaks to us." "It is true indeed," agreed some of the other men. "I saw the image of Moloch speak with my own eyes just last eve. And elder Sheba speaks to our chief god frequently during his morning supplications," said another. "Moloch speaks to the mighty Nimrod more than anyone else," said the first worker. "Indeed, the image spoke to thousands of us who gathered yesterday at the foot of the tower, the image self running through his veins. That is why he is such a mighty hunter. We have been commanded to obey Nimrod. When we do, our God says we will remain fertile and strong. We will never be separated or destroyed by a flood again as long as we obey Nimrod and the gods. After all, it is plain to see what fine things the heavens itself." The temple worker spoke with fiery passion. "And once we complete the top, the heavens themselves will open and we will enter in to defeat the evil God who destroyed our people in the great deluge. Aye, and serves him right too. We will never live in fear of the rain again, nor be scattered to the far reaches of the earth, unified against the God of Adam." Peleg took a couple of steps back to distance himself. He was surprised at the venom in the temple worker's tone. "I see," he said. "Well, we must be on our way," said the other worker. "We have delayed enough." "Farewell, young lad," said the other. "If you have sisters, you should spread the word." The other, If you have sisters, you should spread the word. I'm sure you would not want to see them become old maids." The men all laughed. "'Tis true, no self-respecting man of the city gate would want to select a wife who has not been through the Nuta." "What is the Nuta?" asked Peleg. "Come to the dedication of the Tower of Babel." They laughed even harder and rode off before Peleg could ask another question. Peleg would have rode after them, but he felt unusual. The pit of his stomach burned like fire. He pulled his donkey to the side of the path and sat down. "Maybe if I rest, it will subside." Resting did nothing. The fire burned even stronger. Resting did nothing. The fire burned even stronger. It flowed through his body and seemed to sear his mind. Then the voice spoke. "Peleg." Peleg shook his head. "It must be the light lunch. I must be faint from hunger." He put his head between his knees and drew in a deep breath. "Ah, that is his head between his knees and drew in a deep breath. Ah, that is better." The voice spoke again, this time louder and clearer. "Peleg." Peleg sat up. Melchizedek's instructions came to his mind. He stood up and said out loud, "Speak, Lord, your servant listens," said Peleg. Peleg's time. Location, Tower Complex. Plains of Shinar, Adama. First dimension. Nimrod bounded up the stone steps to the tower 4 at a time. The sun would be in position soon, and he wanted to make sure the sacrifice was in place. He stopped to press a view of the plane and his workers. He went over the series of commands the image had spoken during his last sacrifice. "Good. All is as specified. The gods will be pleased with my service, and my total conquest of these people will be complete." Nimrod turned to inspect all that he had accomplished before entering the top chamber. Just a few levels down, Elder Sheba was leading a group of young women into the lower chamber for their preparations. Nimrod looked through the surveyor to get a better view of each maiden. "Now, which of you for my consort for the ceremony?" he murmured while spying on their activities. "I see you have taken my instructions to heart," said a beautiful male voice from behind. "Only the best for my Nimrod, eh?" "My lord," said Nimrod, bowing at the shadowy form who now stood in the entrance to the chamber. I do apologize for the delay. The preparations have distracted me." "No need to express sorrow, my son," said the eloquent figure. "Your care in obeying my instructions are noted. So, who do you select?" "My master," said Nimrod. "Who would you select?" "You are wise indeed," said the dark visage. "That one is ideal. She is most like the goddess indeed." He pointed to a young woman with swinging dark hair, so long it almost touched the ground. "Who is she?" Nimrod laughed. "Ah, that is Anisi. I have had my eye on her. She is the daughter of your priest, Elder Sheba." "No need for restraint, my son. Once the ceremony begins," said the master, "indulge your every desire." Nimrod asked, "Are there certain requirements that should be performed during the ritual?" "Are you aware of the 7 laws given to Noah?" asked the Dark Lord. "I believe so," said Nimrod. "Break all of them," the master said. "If you can break all of them at once during the ceremony, then that is even better. You first, and then all of the people." "That should be easy enough," said Nimrod. "Excellent, excellent," said the great leader. "I want this people's rebellion to reach high heaven." Peleg time, Tower Complex, Babel, Plains of Shinar, First Dimension. "Behold, your gods speak." Nimrod's voice in crowd. Practically all of Shinar had gathered at the Tower Complex for Nimrod's announcement. Just days before, messengers were sent throughout the empire, and the sound of the drums alerted the tribes to listen for the decree. "Our great temple is almost complete. This will be the finest and the grandest ziggurat almost complete. This will be the finest and the grandest ziggurat in all the land. Never will we be separated again. Never will we be conquered again by division amongst our tribes. Never will we be destroyed again by the rains that fall. Should the promise of the bow in heavens fail, we shall still prevail. Even fail, we shall still prevail, even if we must storm the gates of heaven itself and force the one who sits on the throne to give us entrance again." The crowd erupted into cheers. Nimrod stopped and waited for all the people to settle down. Meanwhile, Elder Sheba appeared at his side on the platform. Nimrod motioned for the young women to come forward. He spoke with confidence. "These virgins of purity and devotion, along with our temple workers, will prepare the communion and sacrifice our gods demand. All are invited to attend and be one with the gods." The crowd applauded and cheered noise away from the tower wall to reveal a new image. This one was female in form. It was a large replica of the small idols many of the women were fond of worshiping in their homes. The female idol held a male infant in her arms, and on her head was a crown that read, "Queen of Heaven." The appearance praise. "Bow before your gods and they will speak," commanded Nimrod. All the people in the courtyard facing the image bowed obediently. Some people began to chant and weep. Suddenly, the stone figure began to creak and groan. Father Eber pushed Joktan to the outskirts of the throng and groan. Father Eber pushed Joktan to the outskirts of the throngs. His son continued to gaze back over his shoulder, trying to get a glimpse of the image. Indeed, it did speak. But the horrid voice coming from the gigantic stone image carved into the tower wall made Eber's stomach sick and his head ache. The dog-headed male image called Moloch voiced dark sayings, while the intricately carved female image with long hair remained silent. "O Queen of Heaven, hear our cries," said Elder Sheba, leading the make her fertile again. "Let the sacrifice of her fruitful seed heal our sins and fill the land." Eber ignored the annoyed glances from the people bowing nearby as he pushed and shoved his way out of the worshiping mass. "This cannot be the voice that spoke to our fathers. It has not the peace of the morning to be the voice that spoke to our fathers. It has not the peace of the morning sun, nor the beauty of the rainbow that spared the eight. Come, my son," said Eber, pulling Joktan with him. "We must get away from this crowd and their folly." "Father," said Joktan, tapping his father's shoulder, "look, the goddess looks remarkably truth if we do not understand what is happening around us." "My son, some things do not need to be understood," said Father Eber. "They must be avoided altogether." Peleg time. Location: Tower of Babel complex. City of Babel, Shinar. By the time Peleg entered the city of Babel, the moon was high and the tower complex was full. He had gone home first to find his father. He had desperately wanted to discuss the secret Father Shem shared about Nimrod with Father Eber and about hearing the voice. The voice told him The voice told him to destroy the image. But how can I do that? Its base was at the top of the ziggurat, and no one was allowed on that level of the tower except temple priests of the highest rank. Not to mention its size. The image was over 15 cubits. That was as tall as a 2-level dwelling. "I need help." He thought of asking his father and brother Joktan, but no one was home. That would have to wait. "I suppose I will just have to find Father Eber and Joktan among the crowd at the tower." Peleg mumbled to himself as he wondered just how he would do that. Peleg dropped his traveling sacks in the floor, tied his donkey to the post outside, and ran fast as he could towards the tower. As he neared, the crowd thickened until finally he found himself in the middle of a multitude. "This is going to take forever," Peleg sighed. The fire in the pit of his stomach urged him onward. So Peleg pushed his way through the throngs of people. They all walked along the stone-paved path leading to the courtyard surrounding the image. Everyone had on finery. The men wore their best robes, sashes, and turbans, while the women donned layers of fine-colored. "Fool, why didn't you change?" Peleg berated himself. "I cannot blend in with the crowd looking like this." He tried to turn around, but the crowd was packed in too tight for him to do that. Just then, the fire began again. Slowly at first in his gut, then it traveled up his spine into his head. The voice spoke. Once again questioned his sanity since he started hearing the voice. There are no yolks around here. Pick up the yolk, said the voice again. Peleg sighed. There are no yolks around. Peleg tripped and was almost pushed to the ground by a large, heavy-set man behind him. He turned around to apologize. You there, boy, said the man gruffly. Pick up that yoke over there and follow me. Peleg's eyes grew wide and his mouth dropped open. It was Nimrod. Peleg felt the crowd part around him to let the giant man through. Don't just stand there looking stupid or you will pay for your sloth, boy. Grab it and follow me. Many pardons, sir. Peleg stammered as he ran and grabbed the yoke sitting on a cart just in front of the main gate. There were 2 large buckets on either end of the wooden bar, filled with an aromatic liquid. Peleg lifted the heavy bar over his shoulders and let the weight rest on his back. He took a couple of steps and stumbled. A little weight rest on his back. He took a couple of steps and stumbled. A little of the liquid sloshed over the rims of the buckets as he did so. How far am I supposed to carry this heavy yoke? Careful now, said Nimrod. These must be full when we reach the sanctuary at the top. There is no time to make more, dimwit. No time to make more, dimwit. Peleg balked at the insult, but said nothing. Though he was humiliated, it actually solved his problem. Nimrod himself was leading him directly to the top of the ziggurat. Peleg followed along obediently without a mumbling word, even though he was carefully up the steps. He looked up. Why did I do that? He felt dizzy. There were at least 500 more steps to the chamber on the ziggurat's first platform. Peleg swallowed and steadied himself. Just focus on the steps. Peleg's knees and shoulders ached. Why didn't Nimrod could have easily borne this load? As the pain in his body intensified, Peleg considered dropping the load. This is just too heavy. I will never make it to the top. If these people want to follow Nimrod, so be it. Suddenly, fire exploded this time from his chest. Heat burned through his heart and flowed. Fire exploded this time from his chest. Heat burned through his heart and flowed down his limbs and up his frame simultaneously. And with the heat came strength. Peleg was amazed at the power flowing through him. He straightened his back and began to whistle a tune. Silence, said Nimrod, looking over his shoulder. But even he seemed surprised at Peleg's stamina and strength. The giant man trudged on, mumbling about the lack of good help. Peleg wondered what would have happened if he had dropped the load. His question was soon answered a few feet later. Peleg saw what looked like the remains of a human man dangling over the ledge. Peleg saw what looked like the remains of a human man dangling over the ledge of the next level of stairs. Joktan had told him stories he had heard at the city gate. It was said that men who dropped their bricks near the upper decks were tossed off the tower as punishment and a new worker sent up to replace them. Nimrod, make a mistake and you die. Peleg shuddered and moved past the decaying corpse. I guess he made a mistake. Here, boy, said Nimrod. Take that to the priest. He will tell you what to do next. Without another word, he continued up the steps. How will I get to the top? This is not the top. Verse sayings came to mind. The steps of a righteous man are ordered. Peleg laughed at the pun. The fire inside him stirred again. Well, sometimes there is nothing to do but the task at hand. Peleg mumbled to himself as he walked to the entrance and pulled the silver cord hanging next to the door. To his appeared, fully adorned in temple worker attire. Joktan's fair cheeks flushed bright red. Peleg's mouth gaped open wide. What are you doing here? They both asked each other simultaneously. I cannot believe Father would allow you to participate in this blasphemy, whispered Peleg. And I cannot believe you are doing chores for the priests of Moloch, replied Joktan smugly. Where is Father? Asked Peleg, ignoring his question. I must find him. Father and I split up so I could come and check on Anisi, said Joktan, moving to block Peleg's view of the room. What? Peleg dodged to look past his brother. Peleg's view of the room. What? Peleg dodged to look past his brother. A few feet behind Joktan was Elder Sheba, kneeling before a shrine to the goddess, so fully immersed in prayer he did not see the stair boy with the scented water he requested, and behind him stood Anisi. She was a vision of beauty. Her dark hair fell like twisted ropes almost to her ankles. Layers of golden silk clung to her youthful form. Her ankles and arms were lined with delicate gold bracelets. The scent of her perfume filled the room. "You!" Anisi exclaimed. "How dare you intrude on the daughters of the Queen of Heaven?" This time Peleg flushed. Anisi did look very much like the offended princess, and he, the worm beneath her foot. Peleg was painfully aware of how wretched he must appear. His dull brown robe was smeared with dirt and stains. The hem of his garment was frayed and so short it drew attention to his worn-out sandals. He knew he smelled as bad as he looked. To top it off, his normally well-groomed hair, his best feature, fell into matted locks. "Father," said Anisi as she tapped Elder Sheba's shoulder, "this infidel is the last thing we need in this sacred place." She pointed towards Peleg. Peleg could do nothing. "My flower," said Elder Sheba, rising from his prayers, "do not allow any upset on this eve that you are to be chosen. This fellow is merely the stair-boy bringing the scented water for the ritual bath." "No, father, he is not a stair-boy," said Anisi rather loudly. "He is Peleg the fool that about, the idiot who dared to juggle the image of the goddess." "There, there," said Joktan smoothly. He too was dressed in finery worthy of a prince. "My brother Peleg is indeed a fool, but I assure you it was not malice, but his mere clumsiness at fault." A bevy of beautiful girls laughed. The room was full of the choicest maidens in all of the empire. Why didn't I notice them before? This increased Peleg's shame even the more. The fire filled him again. The voice spoke, "Remain at peace." Finally, Peleg's voice returned, and when he opened his mouth, even he was dumbfounded from his lips. His speech was that of a king. "My brother and the Honorable Elder Sheba, please pardon my intrusion," he said smoothly, with the briefest bow. He nodded to the young women and continued, "And please forgive my interruption of this momentous occasion. My brother's humor is delightful, is it not? My brother's humor is delightful, is it not?" The young maidens giggled and blushed under his attention. Anisi eyed him, surprised at his newfound demeanor. "I have just returned from an arduous journey, but was utterly delighted to do the simplest favor for my dear friend Anisi." Joktan scowled at him. "When I heard that she was to be honored this eve," said Peleg, with his best mischievous grin, "I just had to play the errand boy and dash up 1,000 steps to bring the scented water for my lady's bath." The maidens all giggled. "Is he not the most I meant no disrespect, Elder Sheba." "None taken, my son," said Elder Sheba. "If I could but trouble you to carry the water to the inner chamber, it is just a few steps further." "Not at all, my lord," said Peleg, as he followed Elder Sheba deeper into the sanctuary and through the heavy double doors. Elder Sheba stopped at the foot of a large fountain, spewing water forth into several baths throughout the room. Peleg glanced up. The room was grand. Its high ceiling was domed and lined with beautiful carvings and painted figures. As he examined the images closely, horrific beings with monstrous features lined the ceiling and the walls. But what was more disturbing were all the vile acts depicted with women and even men alongside the wretched creatures. "You may pour the contents there," said Elder Sheba. He pointed to the large fountain. Peleg's instinct was to run. He shivered in the steam-filled room. But the voice said, "Obey." Peleg carried the contents over and poured them into the upper fountain as requested. The scented water filtered down from the higher pool into channels and filled the other smaller bath with its heady scent. Peleg glanced up again at the fountain and almost gasped before he caught himself. At the top of the fountain was a half-human, half-dog-like figure with its mouth open, fallen described on Father Shem's stone tablets. Peleg took a couple of steps back and almost bumped into Father Sheba, who stared at the malicious image with wonder. "Magnificent, is it not?" Father Sheba didn't wait for an answer. You know the image speaks to me and fills my mind with the most clever ideas. It was he, Peleg recalled. The familiar fire burned like an inferno inside him. "Oh, is that so?" asked Peleg calmly. "And what has been planned for this evening of delights?" "Why, everything you see on these walls," replied Elder Sheba. "It is obvious and inspiring all at once." Peleg reluctantly observed the lurid depictions again. "Will the gods actually come down to this chamber?" asked Peleg. "We shall see," said Elder Sheba. "However, the men of the city and the male temple workers will be ready to perform their roles if necessary." Peleg shuddered. "I see. This one is curious," said Peleg, pointing to a cow-headed image. Infants were shown being placed through the flames jetting outside its open belly. Peleg swallowed to keep the bile from rising to his throat. "Is that to be done in this ceremony as well?" "Of course not," said Elder Sheba with a chuckle. "We have to wait for the babies to be born of these virgins before we can complete the gods' demands. The virgin must conceive before she can deliver, no?" Peleg swallowed the horror he felt. "Anisi!" Panic seeped through his body. He began to sweat. "I cannot leave Anisi and those other young girls to this fate." Suddenly the fire seared through him, fueling Peleg with strength and peace all at once. The voice spoke again. "Destroy the image." Peleg thought, "How? Elder Sheba is here. What can I do? Surely he will not even allow me to touch this." "Peleg, more favor I would ask," Elder Sheba said. "Our other temple workers are all at the heights this eve in preparation for the gods to dwell among us, and cannot be spared from their duties." He paused. "I must attend to the final adornments for the virgins, but these baths must all be filled with those heated stones. If you wouldn't mind assisting me further, I would be most grateful." Peleg shuddered at the thought of being alone in the chamber, but the voice spoke. "Say yes." "Certainly, I would be honored to do a small favor for the father of my friend," said Peleg. "Excellent. I will women in shortly." Elder Sheba glanced at Peleg curiously. He added, "You know, I'm glad to see you sons of Shem coming to see the wisdom of serving our gods. You are more than welcome to join in the festivities." Peleg just nodded and smiled as he began carrying the heated stones. "Leave you to it," said Elder Sheba. Peleg wasted no time. As soon as Elder Sheba left the room, he went straight for the image. He picked up a heavy metal rod from the fire pit. He struck the fountain image with all his might. Nothing happened. The statue did not even have a dent or scratch. Peleg struck it again, Peleg struck it again, and again, and again. Still not even a crack in its form. Peleg fell to his knees, exhausted by his effort, and now as the pain from the arduous trek up the stairs hit his body all at once, he collapsed with weakness. The room looked blurry. Again, he shook his head. "I must be going mad." The images on the wall seemed to be coming to life and swirling towards him. He felt the oppressive darkness of the room hover over him and press him into the ground. Strange snickers and whispers filled his ears. He was so afraid he opened his mouth to scream. No sound came out. Peleg thought, "Oh Lord God, help!" The voice answered, "Speak my words." Peleg didn't have time to wonder what words to use. Almost instantly an utterance of unfamiliar phrases flowed from his mouth. The heavy weight lifted. Peleg felt his strength return and spoke the words even louder. This time he heard shrieks fill the room. The voice spoke again. "Use the incense." Peleg reached into the pouch on his hip, thankful that he always carried the prayers he had been carrying on the earthen floor, and to light the incense. He knelt before the simple altar and prayed to the Lord God. Peleg did not understand the words, but felt their power as the fire burned strong and pure throughout him. He lost awareness of time and even the room around him. He felt his body tingle with energy until he found himself kneeling before a throne of pure white and a room of brilliant white light. He saw the outline of a man's feet in golden sandals. Peleg was too afraid to look up because of the terrifying thunder and lightning coming from that throne. The thunder spoke, saying, lightning answered, saying, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now nothing they propose to do will be withheld from them. The familiar voice of fire agreed, saying, come, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Before the last words of the voice were spoken, the ground beneath him began to shake. Tongues of fire seemed to be falling from the ceiling. Portions of the ceiling began to crumble and fall. The voice spoke again. Run, Peleg. Peleg jumped up and ran as fast as he could again. Run, Peleg. Peleg jumped up and ran as fast as he could towards the double doors and into the dark hall. He could hear the commotion coming from the outer chamber. The young women were screaming and crying. He thought he heard his brother Joktan, but it was hard to understand what they were saying above the rumbling of the earth. Peleg stumbled into the room. Broken pottery and food littered the floor. The heavy linens draping the wall had caught on fire. Elder Sheba was trying to douse them out. Several of the young ladies had been injured and were bleeding. Joktan was trying to calm Anisi down. Her long hair was caught underneath a heavy stone. Joktan was trying to lift it when Peleg ran over. Anisi screamed. Peleg said, we have to leave now. He grabbed Anisi's hand and pulled her up. Then Peleg pushed Joktan in front of him and said, go. The two did not hesitate when they saw the wall they had been leaning on start to crumple. Peleg ushered all the young ladies out of the room. He glanced back at Elder Sheba, who was now trapped. A voice said, leave him. They all made it to the outer stairs safely and began scurrying down the tower wall. He could hear calamity below rising from the courtyard. It seemed like the courtyard was on fire too. Peleg stumbled as a piece of the stair he was on began to crumple. I hope these stairs hold. When he rounded the next corner, he saw they had not. His brother Joktan and Anisi were both trapped inside a wide gap in the stone stairs. Peleg ran towards them and was able to easily free Joktan by removing some loose stones. His ankle was bruised and bleeding, but he could put some of his weight on it. Anisi was harder to free, but he and Joktan worked quickly together to lift her from the rubble. All the while, people from the upper decks were passing them by without a second glance, screaming and yelling. Peleg saw a couple of temple workers slip off the stairs and fall through the broken guardrail to the courtyard below. Peleg looked at Joktan. He saw the fear in his eyes. Peleg wondered, can he see mine too? Peleg said, Joktan, stay near the wall and hold on to it for support. Joktan looked confused. It is so noisy, he can't hear me. So Peleg demonstrated the movement and then scooped up a sack. Joktan nodded and began to ease his way down the stairs. Finally, they made it to safety to the tower floor. The earthquake had subsided. The tower was still standing, though in great disrepair. The people were just as broken. Together, he and Joktan made their way to a spot far away from the tower, in case more debris fell from its heights. Peleg set Anisi gently down on the ground. She was weeping. Peleg saw the crude job he did on the spontaneous haircut. He tried to apologize. Anisi, please forgive me, he started. But I had to. Anisi did not look angry. She seemed grateful. She smiled and spoke. Vetu katomosiha, she said, giving him a hug. Peleg answered, what did you say? Anisi looked at Joktan, repeated the words again, and gave him a hug too. Joktan responded to Anisi, saying, Sume. Anisi laughed. Joktan laughed too, and then to Peleg's surprise, his brother gave him a big hug. Kove suchena veche? Peleg shook his head and shrugged. What are you saying? Joktan looked confused. He said the words again. Peleg could not understand him. They tried to speak to each other to no avail. The same confusion was spreading throughout Shinar. It was as if everyone had gone mad all at once. The cacophony of the gibberish was deafening. Everyone trying to find someone who could understand them. Everyone looking for someone who could tell them what people who spoke similar things began to congregate together and talk. Peleg's heart sunk. Instead of fire, he felt a knot in his stomach. Peleg grabbed a stick and began to write in the dirt. Joktan bent over and tried to read them. He shook his head, grabbed the stick from Peleg, and tried writing his own message. The symbols meant nothing to Peleg. Why can Joktan and Anisi understand each other, but I cannot understand them? The realization of what happened slowly dawned on Peleg. Tears welled up in his eyes as he searched his younger brother's face. There were tears in Joktan's eyes, too.